We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
More than half a century ago, the iconic cartoon The Jetsons prognosticated a future of flying cars and robot intelligence. And it seems that decades later, George Jetson might start feeling at home. Now, a company out in Silicon Valley, Aleph Aero, claims they have the world's first commercially viable flying car. Well, we don't have Doc Brown to explain the science, but we are fortunate to be joined by Liberty Nation's editor-in-chief, Lisa K. Donner, who's been following the story and has written a fantastic piece on the pages of libertynation.com on this very subject. Thanks for coming on, Lisa.
It's good to be here, Mark. Really good to be here, especially when I get to talk about the Jetsons, one of my favorite cartoons. Except for Bullwinkle. Bullwinkle was pretty strong. I love Natasha and Boris, too.
Well, you know, the Natasha and Boris nexus there, we're seeing that. There's so many tweets about with Putin and Trudeau as the Natasha and Boris, and it's kind of fun. But my first question has to be, it's about the flying cars. Is this a genuine flying car that this company is putting out, or is it a fundraising scheme to start development on one?
You know, as strange as this may sound, this is really happening. As you mentioned, Aleph, A-L-E-F, or Aleph, I'm not sure how they pronounce it. They've been at it for a number of years. Just four guys out in Silicon Valley. They decided to put a prototype down on a napkin in a cafe where they were all sitting, and they thought, oh, it would take 6 months to produce. Well, it's been about 5 years or 6 years, and they've got the first four-seater car to aerial vehicle that is now in front of the FAA for flight testing. They have been given permission to flight test this vehicle, this flying vehicle.
What are the particulars of the vehicle? I mean, this Jetson mobile, what can it do?
Well, it's called the ASKA A5. It seats four people. It travels up to 250 miles at a clip. It's an electric vehicle, and it travels at speeds up to 150 miles an hour. So, you don't have to refuel, I guess, until you're at the end of 250 miles. But one would think that this would be more for urban areas than it would be for, the back 40.
That's the kind of thing that actually worries me. Now, Lisa and I, for our audience, we have discussed this in one of our morning coffee calls of the bathrobe brigade, as we call it.
At length.
I'm a little skeptical about how safe these cars are going to be. Now, not for the drivers or the passengers, but for pedestrians. And you wrote in your piece on libertynation.com that, and I guess you got this from me, is that a farmer plowing somewhere in the back 40 or someone in their 10th-story apartment could now become a traffic fatality. Now, Lisa, am I just a tech-phobic Philistine?
You're a bit of a Debbie Downer, but I love you anyway. And, you're right. I mean, there's a multitude of issues. They did mention that they have found a way to get this vehicle in flight without a runway. So that's a big deal, which means it kind of lifts off like a helicopter.
Vertical launch, yeah.
Right, a vertical launch, and then it starts moving forward. But of course, the FAA has a whole host of issues, at what altitude, and, does it have to be higher than the tallest building? How high can it go? All I know is that this company is really, really taking orders for this now, and the FAA is allowing them to test it. It could be a while before they, maybe it would have early warning signs for things like tall buildings, et cetera. I can't imagine, though, getting around New York City. Wow, that's such a tight space and loads of tall buildings.
So, I'm gonna argue from the Philistine point of view here, or call me Amish.
Debbie Downer. Here we go.
Call me Amish if you like. But when I'm driving my car, I've got. Well,
you do have the Amish look. I'm sorry.
I do. It's the beard.
You set me up for that one.
I've got quite an old car. It's a great car, but it's an old car, and it does break down despite its German craftsmanship. But when it breaks down, I kind of, something's gone wrong. I pull over to the side of the road, and I'm good. But if I'm flying at 300 feet, what am I going to do besides plummet in a fiery death ball.
Uh, well, I think what they're trying to do is deal with the issue of modern congestion, which is really bad,
Sure.
Mark. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
if you're in LA, people are spending an average of 62 hours a year in gridlock. In New York City, the latest estimates are 102 hours a year in gridlock. It's every commuter's dream to be able to vertically fly up
Mm.
and over. Now, there is an issue of the criminal element, which I think is a bigger issue than worried about whether Doc Brown flies into, Trump Tower. But the criminal element, is an issue because I'm thinking mostly about the wall. I mean, what's to stop the cartel from
Mm.
taking flight? You can build a wall. You want to build a wall, and here we go, up and away, and they're over the border in a heartbeat. And then
Yeah,
what
I
are we
mean,
going to? We're going to have U.S. Customs with aero cars. Do we have police?
well,
With their own cars?
that's the reality, isn't it? The law enforcement has to keep up with the criminals so they don't get outmatched. Now, we've seen this throughout history, especially with like firearms, for example. If the criminals have this, the police need this, and
Right.
I think that's actually quite fair, right? You need equal force to oppose force. So if you've got cartel members or even just regular criminals, let's say drug dealers, the price tag on this, I believe it's about 300 grand. Is that right?
Yes, and I'll get into that in the very next question.
So uh, they've got these cars. Drug dealers can afford these cars, and so they do their business, or and they do their crimes. They try and get away. The police are going to need the flying cars to track them as well, right? Because a regular police car and a regular car, they're stuck to the roads. They can't
Well,
drive through
presumably
or over buildings.
they would have better aero cars than the regular person, so they can at least go a little faster, a little
So
higher.
already we're in a flying cars arms race. This
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
this
yeah.
can't end well. Let's
But
talk
you
about,
know,
please.
let me just say, we just passed the July 4th week, and you can't fault American ingenuity. I mean,
Hmm.
we've got the mojo when it comes to when it comes to ingenuity. These guys are putting this up for, as you mentioned, 299,099,999 as
It sounds better, right? It sounds better, and you save a
yeah,
dollar.
299 comma 999. Yeah. Who was the uh politician that said 999?
Adolf Hitler.
No, no. It was Herman Cain. That's it. Consumers now have an opportunity to pay up to $150 if they want to get in the general queue. If they're really serious about it and they want the priority queue, it's $1,500. Now, there's no word whether this is an El Strippo or if it's got all the bells and whistles that you would expect in your first Aero car, but it doesn't matter because, according to the industry rag Aero Time Hub, the company has already secured $50 million in pre-orders.
That is quite a hefty sum. Now, what do you think this is going to roll out like? Because once any technology becomes available, obviously there's people start modifying, working on things, and because of the wonderful, wonderful free market system, these things they come down in price and they become much more widely available. But who do you think's on the ground floor getting in? Who's put down their $1,500 deposits?
Well, I think it's for people that money doesn't matter, They're going to be first in on this. And, there's going to be a lot of people that are fascinated with this whole idea. I mean, look, just last week or the week before, we were talking about the submersible that got imploded. But
Mm.
there were 5 people willing to pay, what was it, 250,000 a seat?
$250,000 a seat, yeah.
Well, if they're willing to go down to see a Titanic, 2,000 odd feet down in the ocean blue, I think that they're ready to take the skies as well for a near $50,000 more.
I think you're right there. Lisa K. Dunner, thanks ever so much for joining us.
I just want to end with, is this a great country or what?
It is indeed. Thanks,
Thanks,
Lisa.
Mark.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's
I'm
Lisa
Lisa
K.
K.
Donner.
Donner.
Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe
You only
space.
did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5.